This video is sponsored by Classic Football Shirts, the best place to get your classic and vintage football shirts. To get cheap retro Palace shirts, click the link in the description below. And for an extra 10% off, use the code CFSPJ10 at checkout. Hello and welcome to the Crystal Palace podcast. I'm Alfonso Greenbrook, and in today's podcast I'll be looking over the game against Arsenal by bringing my match review player rankings and my man of the match. As well as this, I'm also going to bring you interviews with Roy Hodgson and Andros Townsend after the game. So let's begin. Palace's long unbeaten run came to an end at the hands of Arsenal, as Alexis Sanchez netted twice in the space of 4 minutes to hand Arsenal the victory despite a late rally by the Eagles. Roy Hodgson's team had found themselves behind at the break thanks to Mustafi's opener, but 4 minutes into the second half they drew level when Andros Townsend scored against the Gunners in S2E27 for the second consecutive season, and give Palace hope of continuing their best run on top flight form in 27 years. But Sanchez's quick-fire brace just after the hour mark put the Gunners in control until James Tomkins headed in a late corner to set up a grandstand finish. But the North Londoners earned the Derby Day bragging rights and ensured that Arsene Wenger tasted victory in what was his record-equalling 810th Premier League appearance as a manager. The home side began like a team who hadn't tasted defeat in the previous 8 games and enjoyed lengthy spells of possession in the Gunners' half. And on 15 minutes they came a whisker away from taking the lead, but unlike the corresponding fixture last season, Yohan Cabaye couldn't quite find the net from long range as his low blast skidded wide. That warning saw Arsenal crank up the pressure and they became the dominant side for the rest of the half. As they worked through their gears, they created a few threatening moments in the final third, including a Jack Wilshere blast from 25 yards that fell straight to Julian Speroni, but on 25 minutes they found a way through the Eagles' defence. A free kick into the box was cleared out as far as Mesut Ozil, who found Lacazette inside the box. After seeing a cross blocked, the club record signing got the ball back on his left foot before firing goals from a tight angle, and after Speroni parried it away, it fell invitingly for Mustafi, who produced a composed first-time finish to hand the lead to Wenger's team. It was very nearly 2-0 4 minutes later when an excellent incisive pass by Sanchez allowed Ozil to put goals, but Speroni showed fine reactions to stick out a hand and deflect it away. And the chances continued to rack up as Lacazette rippled the side netting after creating a shooting chance after many twists and turns. And then somehow the visitors squandered a 3-on-2 opportunity after Ozil broke through and rounded Speroni. There was a brief glimmer for Palace amongst these opportunities when Wilfried Zaha flashed an effort wide of the mark after cutting in off the left flank, but their fortunes were about to change just 4 minutes after the restart. Playing with some fire in his belly, Zaha burst into life down the left, and after some textbook trickery saw him escape from Callum Chambers, he cut the ball back to the penalty spot where Townsend was waiting. He lashed the ball first time past Petr Cech to score for the first time since scoring in the 3-0 win against the Gunners last April. That saw Hodgson's team grow in confidence, and not long after pulling level, Jeffrey's luck blasted into the side netting after latching onto a Zaha through ball. But the mood around Sellers was punctured 12 minutes later as Arsenal netted twice in quick succession to put clear daylight between the sides. Firstly, Chambers lofted a high ball into the box which was once again dropped to Lacazette, and after he got it under control he received a shout from Sanchez to lay it off, and the Chilean rifled a powerful blast towards the near post which zipped through James Tomkins' legs, and despite Speroni getting the glove to it, it proved too venomous. And 4 minutes later the Palace keeper was again beaten by his fellow South American when Jack Wilshere received time and possession inside the centre circle and played a fine pass onto the on-rushing Sanchez's feet. And a delicious first touch set him up perfectly to slide into the corner and virtually put the game to bed with 24 minutes yet to play. Only another good stop by Speroni prevented Hector Bellerin from adding a fourth, when once again another long ball over the top caused problems for the home defence, but with 10 minutes remaining Palace threw everything at their opponents. The onslaught began when Zaha screwed a header wide when well placed, and soon after Bakary Sakho blazed horribly over before seeing an attempt deflect inches wide. But from that resulting corner, Tomkins headed in Townsend's delivery to net his first goal in over a year with just over a minute of normal time remaining. Despite the Eagles' best efforts though, they couldn't find another equaliser, and their impressive lengthy unbeaten run finally came to an end. They say let good things come to an end, and so it proved as Crystal Palace's unbeaten run was ended by Arsenal on Thursday night at Selhurst Park. Going into the game, Palace were unbeaten in 8 Premier League games and in 6 matches at Selhurst Park, with the run stretching back to November the 5th and September the 16th respectively. But Arsenal were good value for their victory on the night, with Alexis Sanchez scoring a brace to help the Gunners take all 3 points back to North London. Palace did show character in coming back from 1-0 down, with Andros Townsend's equaliser cancelling out Mustafi's first half opener for the Gunners, while James Tomkins provided hope later on with a header, but it wasn't enough as Arsenal held on for the 3-2 win. So what did we learn from the game? Here are 5 things. Number 1. What is it with Arsene Wenger and Coach Zips? Not for the first time in his 810 Premier League games in charge, the Arsenal boss was caught on camera struggling to do up his Coach Zip, this time in the first minutes of the game here at Selhurst Park. Fortunately for the Frenchman, he managed to work it out as it was a very cold night in South London. Number 2. Sitting too deep. It was little surprise when Arsenal opened the scoring, albeit perhaps the nature of the goal was fairly scrappy from a Palace perspective. But Palace had been under the cosh for large periods in the first half before the goal, and it only seemed a matter of time before the Gunners made their possession and territorial advantage count, with the Palace players standing off. Roy Hodgson admitted as much in his post-match press conference, adding that Palace did not pressurise their opponents enough in the first half. Number 3. Channeling the frustration. Crystal Palace were not at their best in the first half, but they were barely recognisable as the same team in the early stages of the second half, as the Eagles flew out of the traps, with Andros Townsend firing them level after Wilfried Zaha's cross. And Zaha was at the heart of it. He had endured a frustrating first half, with the Ivory Coast international booked at half-time after showing dissent towards referee Michael Oliver as the players made their way down the tunnel. But he channeled his frustrations he felt to spur him on in the second half, with Zaha causing plenty of problems for the Arsenal defenders, setting up Townsend for the equaliser and delivering plenty of balls into the box as the Eagles sought a route back into the game. And it was little surprise that his best moments came when he was out on the wing, allowing him to play his natural game and take on defenders with his pace and trickery. Number 4. A touch of class. Alexis Sanchez showed why he is such a sought-after player with his quick-fire double, that turned the tide back in Arsenal's favour after a resurgence from Palace early on in the second half. His first goal, a snapshot in the box, caught Julian Speroni out as he fired through the legs of James Tomkins, leaving Speroni little time to adjust after seeing it late. And his second goal followed a superb ball over the top from Jack Wilshere, with Sanchez showing a turn of pace to leave the Palace defence behind before finishing with ease. Sanchez wasn't the only Arsenal player to impress though, with Wilshere also putting in a superb performance in the midfield for the Gunners. Making his 4th consecutive start for the Gunners, he proved that he is back in form, and his assist for Arsenal's 3rd goal was superb, with the midfielder chipping a delightful ball over the top for Alexis Sanchez to burst through and score. And number 5. Risk and reward. Crystal Palace got themselves into some good positions in the second half as they chased the game, but more often than not moves broke down in the final third. And more often than not it was a result of players not gambling on the ball falling to them in the box, with Christian Benteke particularly guilty of this. On several occasions he was in the penalty area when Wilfried Zaha or Andros Townsend delivered balls into the box, but he did not make the right move to escape defenders, leading to frustration from the home supporters and his teammates. Benteke didn't have his best game in a Palace shirt, but he and the rest of his teammates will need to take more risks in and around the penalty area if the Eagles are to make the most of such opportunities. So I'm now going to move on to the player ratings, but before I start, don't forget you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Crystal Palace for all the latest Palace news. And also, if you're on Facebook, do feel free to join our Facebook group, which is a really great place to join in with discussions and share your opinions with other fans. And much like a forum, it's a great place to upload videos, photos, and any news articles you found online that you want to share with other Palace fans. Then of course do join a Facebook group so you can do so. And much like what I've said there, I'm a member of quite a lot of forums, and the Facebook group is basically the same thing, a great place where you can not only post your own opinions and share articles, photos from the game, but also you can read what other fans are saying about the game, and you can compare that opinion or their opinion to your own. So if you are someone who likes to read what others have to say and compare that to your own opinion, then of course do join the Facebook group. Now another great place to share your opinion is in the YouTube comments, so if you are listening to the podcast on YouTube, then do feel free to drop a comment below the video with your player ratings, and that's rating the player's performances from 1 to 10, with 10 being the best. And you can comment this along with your views of the game, so even if you don't want to do your player ratings, do comment below, something about a certain player, about which goal you thought was the best, about how you thought the referee played, anything about the game you want to comment, then do of course do it in the YouTube comments. And the only reason I want you to do this is so that other fans who come to the video not only listen to my opinion in the podcast, but they can also see what you guys wrote in the comment section and see how their opinion compares to my opinion, and also your opinion in the comment compares to theirs as well. So once again, it just relates back to the discussions. If you are someone who likes to not only listen to my opinion in the podcast but also share your own, then do of course drop it in the YouTube comment section below. But if you are an Arsenal fan, even if you're not a Palace fan, any fans who come to the video, do drop your comments below, because it's great to have discussions about what you, let's say, Arsenal fans thought about the game, and compare that to how Palace fans thought about the game. Because I'm sure that in terms of a Palace perspective, we knew we were going to lose this game. It's pretty hard playing against an informed Arsenal side, but we never expected to lose it 3-2. And then Arsenal fans were thinking, yeah, they're probably going to win this game against an informed Palace side. It's going to be a hard game. And actually, they made it difficult for themselves in the fact that they were 3-1 up and they went on to win it only 3-2. So there's going to be different opinions from different fans. So do comment below with your views, whether you're an Arsenal or a Palace fan. Now, if you do want to follow any of these social media pages, and of course do join the Facebook group, then do check all links that will be in the description below. But I'm now going to move on to my player ratings, starting in goal with Julian Speroni, who I am going to give a 6. Will be disappointed to parry the ball to Mustafi, who opened the scoring, but made up for it minutes later with his superb stop to deny Mesut Ozil from close range. So Julian Speroni here, I've given him a 6, and there's been quite a lot of debate about the first goal, especially in this game, and whether Julian Speroni was at fault for that. But if you look at the game, 3-2, we've conceded 3 goals, and you've got to look at that when we haven't conceded many goals recently. You've got to look at the keeper and say, could he have done better with any of the goals? And certainly, with the first goal, there's been a bit of debate as to whether he could have done better, whether he should have done better. And then the other goals, I think they were fantastic strikes from Alexis Sanchez. So really, there's not going to be too much blame on him from that. But in terms of giving him a 6, I've given him the benefit of the doubt, because although some people may blame him for that Mustafi goal, actually after that he made superb saves to keep us in the game and obviously help us to, obviously we didn't go on to win the game, but help us to get back into the game. And it finished 3-2, which really, if you look at the game as a whole, it really isn't a fair reflection of the game when you can consider how dominant Arsenal was. And it probably could have been 4-5-0, but 3-2, I'll take that as a result. Doesn't look that bad on paper, and we can move on to the next one. But in terms of Speroni's performance, I've given him a 6. If you look back at Mustafi's goal, Lacazette has put in a fantastic shot into the box. You could argue it's a cross because it made its way to Mustafi, but let's say for the sake of it, it's a shot. Obviously, Speroni makes a fantastic save. He does what a goalkeeper should do and puts it into the less dangerous area, which is fine because people are criticising him for parrying the ball, but he put it into the least dangerous area, which wasn't in front of him. But because Martin Kelly weren't defending properly, he was ball watching, Mustafi was able to get on the ball and slot it home. And if you look back at the replays, there's a very, very small area of the goal that Mustafi has to aim at, and he puts it right down the middle. So in terms of that goal, yes, you may blame Speroni for the fact that he parried it into Mustafi's area, and he probably said thank you very much, and he obviously opened the scoring. But in terms of that, I think you can't really blame Speroni too much for that, because he's done what goalkeepers should do, and in terms of parrying it away from danger. So rather than parrying it into the packed box where there's loads of players, put it out onto the flank, which he did. But because Martin Kelly weren't defending properly, he let Mustafi get onto the ball, and obviously he slotted it in between his legs. So really, in terms of that goal, I've given Speroni the 6 because of the important saves he's made, and I'm not really going to blame him too much for the first goal. And to be honest, as soon as we conceded that goal, you could see the momentum had gone towards Arsenal, because we started the game reasonably well, a little bit of possession, a few chances here and there, but then Arsenal grew into the game and we did struggle to keep ourselves in it. But shortly after the goal, fantastic save from Mesut Ozil. Once again, Alexis Sanchez putting a fantastic ball into the box. Mesut Ozil tries to dink it in over Speroni, but Speroni makes a fantastic save. So that's just showing, yes, he arguably made a mistake for the first goal, but when called upon, he can make a fantastic save, or a superb save, to obviously stop Mesut Ozil. But to be honest, throughout the rest of the game, the remainder of it, he made quite a number of good saves, and obviously that kept the visitors at bay. And to be honest, yes, it divides fans as to whether he was at fault for the first goal. You could argue the second goal, but to be honest, I can't really blame him for the first goal, purely because he done the right thing in parrying it away from the danger area. And it's just the fact that Martin Kelly wasn't defending properly, and that's the reason why the goal obviously got conceded. But to be honest, I've given him a 6 because I thought that the saves he made were quite crucial, and they obviously kept us in the game, and especially that one from Mesut Ozil, which was absolutely superb. That save in particular is one that sticks out for me and was actually quite important in terms of keeping us in the game and stopping Arsenal from building too much momentum, and they go on to thrash us in the game. But to be honest, do comment below whether you think that he's at blame for the first goal. Arguably, maybe, but I personally don't think not. The second goal, fantastic ball, to Alexis Sanchez. Could you blame Speroni? Possibly, but I think it's a fantastic shot from Alexis Sanchez. And then the third goal, no blame whatsoever. Fantastic ball from Wilshere to Alexis Sanchez. Fantastic finish. So really, for me, not really too much blame on Speroni, and that's why I've given him a 6. But to be honest, the fact does remain that the goalkeeper and a striker are the main additions we need in January. And obviously, it's not ideal that we need someone when we've got Speroni and Hennessy, but it's quite crucial that we need a new goalkeeper, because quite clearly they're not up to Premier League standards, or top Premier League standards, which are going to keep you in the lead in the league. So really, the fact does remain that we do need a new addition in the January window. And obviously, it's not ideal that some of the players we're being linked with are not fantastic keepers, but we need someone else at the minute, whether it's just to give a little bit more competition to Hennessy or Speroni, or whether it's because someone like Kevin Trapp, for example, one of the players we're linked with, whether it's he comes in with a little bit more quality and can help us going forth this season. But Julian Speroni here, I've given him a 6. Some could argue he's at fault for the Mustafi goal, but in my opinion, I've given him a 6 because of the important, superb saves he made throughout the game. Now to move on to the right back, Martin Kelly, who I'm going to give a 6. Arguably could have been tighter to Mustafi when he was free to score the opener. Did well to limit Sanchez in the first half, but the wing's quality was far too much for him to handle after the break. So Martin Kelly here, I've given him a 6, and before I go on to talk about his performance as a whole, linking back to what I said about Speroni, I'm not really going to blame Speroni for the goal purely because he parried the ball into the right area, but it was Martin Kelly who, in my opinion, is to blame for the first goal, purely because he could have been tighter to Mustafi, but what he should have done is tracked the run of Mustafi and not allowed him to get on the end of that ball in the first place. So whether that's Martin Kelly gets in front of the ball and clears it, or whether it's because he stays tight to Mustafi and stops Mustafi getting to the ball in the first place, whatever it is, Martin Kelly arguably, in my opinion, should have done better in terms of stopping Mustafi being that free and having that much space to slot the ball home. And that's not taking anything away from Mustafi, because it was a fantastic finish for a centre back. Great accuracy to get it into that small space between Speroni and the post, so that's great. But Martin Kelly arguably should have been doing better there. So do comment below whether you think Speroni or Kelly was at fault for them goals. But personally, for me, I thought that the blame for me rests on Kelly's shoulders. But in terms of what else he done in the first half, I think in the first half he done quite well to limit Sanchez, because Sanchez in the first half didn't really have any real chances on goal. And if you look back at the first half highlights, you can see that actually Martin Kelly done an alright job of marking Sanchez in the first half. But in the second half, it was the complete opposite. He did really struggle to keep Sanchez, stop Sanchez attacking. And obviously, because of that, the consequence of that is that, Sanchez went on to score 2 goals. So although Kelly done alright to limit him in the first half, because of the quality of Sanchez and because maybe Martin Kelly's not the best right back and he's better a centre back, whatever it was, in the second half, Sanchez's quality shone through, and it was just too much for Kelly to handle, and he did really struggle in terms of keeping him quiet in the second half. But like I've already said, first half, yes, he dealt with Sanchez really well, but he should have been much tighter to Mustafi, or at least should have cleared the ball. But to be honest, if you look at the game as a whole, he did struggle against the fast-paced attack. And we know how much pace Arsenal have got up front with Ozil and Sanchez and Lacazette, so we knew Arsenal were going to punish us because we haven't got the fastest backline. But when you've got someone like Kelly, who was venturing forward so much, he was going so forward throughout the game, because he hasn't got that pace to get back, he did sort of punish us. And because obviously we struggled already against that pacey attack, obviously because Kelly was going so far forward, it just made it even worse. But yes, it's good that he ventured forward to support the players, and that's something I've criticised him for. Yes, he's been good defensively, but he hasn't quite done what Joe Ward has done and Fosu Mensah in terms of supporting the attack. So it was good to see him going forward and attacking. But against a team like Arsenal, if you're going to do that, you've got to be very careful, because what was evident in this game is that whenever Kelly went forward, because he hasn't got the pace to go back, he obviously struggled to keep that attack quiet. But to be honest, for me, the main talking point for me, or the main thing we can take back from this game, is that yes, Martin Kelly is a good player. On his day, he can be a fantastic defender. And that's not to say he's one of our best at the club, but whenever he's played at centre-back alongside Sacco, you know, the last few games at right-back, he's actually put in quite good performances. But for me, I think it's quite clear that he's not as good at right-back as he is at centre-back, so he's much more solid at centre-back because he isn't fast, so he can just stay at centre-back, doesn't have to keep running up and down the flanks, so that's really good. And in terms of playing as a right-back, because he isn't fast, he's not good in attacks because he hasn't got that pace to obviously run down the flank. But for me personally, because of this, because he's obviously quite clearly not good at right-back as he is at centre-back, for me it's quite clear that Fosu-Mensah against Man City has to start, because City have got so much pace and quality up front that we need someone like Fosu-Mensah who's got the pace. Not necessarily we're going to keep City quiet, but we need to try as best as possible not to get completely destroyed on Sunday. So in my opinion, because Kelly isn't that great at right back, I think we need to start Fosu-Mensah in the next game. But Martin Kelly here, I've given him a 6. His first half performance, other than giving Mustafi too much space to score, his first half performance in keeping Sanchez quiet was fairly solid. But in terms of his second half, he was slightly worse. And, you know, that just goes back to, if you look back at the 2 goals that Sanchez did score, they both came down on Kelly's side. So Martin Kelly here, I think a 6 is a fair result. Now to move on to the centre-back and captain, Shkodran, who I'm going to give a 6. Might have commanded the box better to clear the ball when Sanchez scored his first. Individually, he was positioned better to deal with the danger. So Shkodran, I've given him a 6 here, and much like the performance of the whole defence, when you consider how good Arsenal are going forward, the fact that we only lost the game 3-2 is, you've got to give a bit of credit to the defenders, because purely in my opinion, the amount of chances that Arsenal had, we could have lost 5, maybe even 6-0, purely based on the chances they had. So in terms of our defensive performance, yes, it wasn't fantastic, but you've got to give a bit of credit to Dan and Tomkins because of how well they actually tried to at least deal with the danger that Arsenal posed. But in terms of Stan's performance, in terms of being the captain, I thought there was nothing wrong with his captaining performance. You know, that's something which I've criticised him for last season, beginning of this season. But last few games, he's captained the side fairly well, so there's nothing really on that front to discuss about his game. But in terms of the first goal that Sanchez scored, you know, both his goals were fantastic. But in terms of Shkodran, he was commanding the box well throughout the game, in the fact that Arsenal only scored 3 goals. But the first goal that Sanchez scored, it probably would have been better, rather than just commanding the box and trying to get rid of the danger. He should have just cleared the ball, hoofed it long, as opposed to trying to play it out the back. Because obviously, as evident in the fact that Sanchez scored, it obviously didn't work playing it out from the back because Arsenal went on to score. But to be honest, other than that blip where, you know, we tried to play it out instead of, you know, just clearing the ball, other than that, I thought he was positioned quite well to deal with the danger. And like I said, the amount of chances that Arsenal had, I think that he dealt with it fairly well. But in terms of individual things he's done throughout the game, which I did pick up on, there was one important block from Granit Xhaka's goal-bound shot from inside the box. So, you know, Xhaka was winning that midfield battle, so he was getting chances in and around the box. Obviously, he had a chance inside the box, and Dan made a really important save. So just highlighting there that although he may not have been the best for Sanchez's goal, once again, going back to how we were alright defensively, Shkodran made that really important block there. And actually, quite a lot of the time, he was on hand to head clear several crosses from the right flank. So because Martin Kelly was going so far forward, it left space down that right flank. And because of that, Arsenal exploited it, putting crosses into the box. But obviously, luckily for us, Shkodran was on hand just to head all of them clear. So really, we didn't get punished from them crosses. Because if you look back at the goals, there were only fantastic balls from Wilshere and the other one, which was a bit scrappy, that actually led to Arsenal scoring them 2 goals in the second half. Because in reality, most of the time when the balls came into the box, whether it be from the left flank or the right flank, I thought that Shkodran dealt with it quite well in terms of heading it clear. But in terms of, you know, the game as a whole, we did find it quite difficult not to be dragged out of position, because obviously how good the Arsenal line was. It's quite difficult to stay in your position and not get dragged out wide or further forward because of, you know, the Arsenal's positioning. But in terms of his game overall, I thought that because Arsenal were looking in the mood, they were looking to win this game, they were looking to punish us, I still thought that Shkodran and James Tomkins, I thought they've done fairly well in terms of stopping their attacks. And to be honest, I think a 6 is a fair result. You win the game 3-2. It's not necessarily the worst result. Yes, it ends our 8-game winning our lossless streak. We were unbeaten in 8. Yes, it ended that run, but really, realistically, did we really expect to beat Arsenal? Personally, no. So the fact that we only lost 3-2 and it could have been even higher, you've got to give credit to the defenders in terms of keeping that scoreline down. But Shkodran here, I've given him a 6. I thought individually he was positioned quite well throughout the game to deal with the danger. One important block from Zaha, obviously, to stop a goal scoring opportunity there. And other than where he didn't clear the ball for Sanchez's goal, I don't think he done much wrong in the game. But Shkodran here, I think a 6 is a fair result. Now to move on to his centre-back partner, James Tomkins, who I'm going to give a 7. Like his partner at the back, Tomkins was rarely caught out of position and won most of his individual battles. Rose the highest to score a late goal from a corner. So James Tomkins here, I've given him a 7, and I keep mentioning this week in, week out now, but if you look at the last sort of 3 or 4 games, James Tomkins has been in and around the 6-7 mark in terms of his rating, and quite regularly he's been on the man and match shortlist. So that just shows that actually at the moment, other than, let's say, Wilfried Zaha, who's been scoring and assisting goals, actually James Tomkins is one of the informed players at the minute, and that's great to see. That normally he plays 2 or 3 games, gets injured, but he's now stringing a few games together, and actually he's looking fairly solid at the back. And although we had worries about the Dan and Tomkins partnership at the back, I think actually, even though we've seen it in the last few games, I think it actually does look alright. But much like the things I said for, Shkodran, like his partner, I thought Tomkins was rarely caught out of possession, and that's the good thing. Arsenal, the way they play with their front 3, who are obviously always changing positions, trying to catch out your defenders. Because of that, you would expect your defenders to go out, go forward or go out wide and obviously get caught out of position. But I thought Tomkins and Dan, their game awareness was pretty good, and actually they've done pretty well not to get caught out of position. And in terms of Dan, he obviously won all the headers, and in terms of Tomkins, all of his individual battles, he won most of them, whether that be making a tackle, making a block, making or clearing the ball with a header or a long ball, whatever it was. I thought that whenever he had these individual battles with the attacking force that Arsenal have, I still thought he done brilliantly there. But in terms of the goal, obviously his performances have been so great recently, and sometimes when players, when a striker has a really good game, the reward is that he scores. Whereas the centre back is very rare that they get rewarded with a goal for their performance. But it was great to see Tomkins get the goal. Our first goal from a set piece this season, obviously brought the game back to 3-2. Obviously we didn't go on to get the equaliser for 3-3, but the fact that he was able to rise the highest out of all of the height that Arsenal have got in the box. He rose the highest, bullet header, right in front of the home still. And it's always great to get a late goal, whether it wins you the game or not. It's great to see, a centre-back get a goal late on. But to be honest, in terms of the game as a whole, it was another commanding performance. And to be honest, because our backline was being pulled all over the place, out wide, further forward, because for much of the game we were getting pulled out, you can understand it being a difficult game for centre-backs. But I thought, like I've already mentioned, Dan and Tomkins actually had an alright game in terms of commanding the backline to make sure that they didn't get pulled out of position. But to be honest, obviously I've given Tomkins a 7 here because of, he's had another great game. But he is an unsung hero in the last 3 games. People most of the time don't notice his work because of how well he plays defensively. You don't really see any bits of magic from him. But that's what you want. You want a consistent player who can constantly put in 6, 7 out of 10 performances every week. And that's something that Tomkins has been doing recently, because people often, they look at Zaha and go, oh, he's scoring goals, that's great. You can see the class that he brings to the side. But whereas Tomkins, because he isn't scoring or assisting, or he's not keeping clean sheets, you don't actually see how much work he's doing defensively in terms of keeping us solid at the back. And he's one of the main players, hence why I've given him a 7. He's one of the main reasons we didn't go on to lose this game 5, maybe even 6-0, because of the chances Arsenal had. It's mainly him because of how good he was defensively. But in terms of his overall performance, like I've said already, it was great that he didn't get caught out of position when Arsenal were playing really well. And it was great to see that he won all of his individual battles, whether they be headers, tackles or blocks. And also it's great to see him rise higher than all of the other players in the Arsenal box, score that late goal from a corner, which actually, like I've already mentioned, is our first set piece goal this season. Obviously for the team, obviously we haven't scored from a set piece this season, but also it's his first goal of the season. So hopefully But now we're starting to put more good deliveries into the box from set pieces. Hopefully more set piece goals like the one here from Tomkins can come. And, you know, got to give credit to Andros Townsend for that cross, because some of our deliveries recently haven't been good enough, hence why we haven't scored goals from set pieces. But actually, now we had the Tiger Man in Tomkins in the box, Townsend putting a very good cross into the box, and obviously Tomkins was able to score from that. But a 7 for him, I think, is a fair result. Now to move on to the left back, Jeffrey Slop, who I'm going to give a 5. Had Ozil, Hector Bellerin and Lacazette to contend with, and just about managed in the first half. The same cannot be said for the Palace man after the break. So Jeffrey Slop here, I've given him a 5, and to be honest, I've talked about the back four playing fairly solid in this game, in the fact that we kept the scoreline at 3-2, and we only conceded 3 goals, you know, when you compare that to the amount of chances Arsenal had. So you could say that defensively we had an alright performance, in the fact that we didn't completely capitulate. But I thought that Jeffrey Slop, in terms of that back four, was probably the weakest link, hence why I've given him a 5 for this game. But in terms of who he had to deal with in the game, you know, I talked about Martin Kelly, you know, having someone like Sanchez to deal with, who of course is in fantastic form, so it's obviously going to be difficult for Kelly to deal with him. But Jeffrey Slop, on the other hand, had Ozil, Bellerin and Lacazette to contend with, and in the first half, give him his credit, he dealt with them quite well in the first half. But in the second half, after the break, all of the other team, or all the rest of the players in the team, seemed to be regenerated and seemed to come out rejuvenated after the half-time team talks. Obviously Hodgson said something which geared the team up, so most of the team done well. But Jeffrey Slop, it didn't seem to have an impact on him, because his first half performance, you know, was much better than his second half performance. Because although it's very difficult to deal with the pace of Ozil, Bellerin and Lacazette, and obviously the quality that they have, but still, when you consider he done well in the first half, you'd expect him to do the same in the second half. But really, after the break, his performance got even worse, and that's why I've given him a 5. Because really, if you look at the other players, even though Kelly did struggle against Sanchez, he was quite consistent throughout the game, although not brilliant, but he was consistent, hence why I've given him a 6. Shkodran, Tomkins, they were consistent throughout the game, but Jeffrey Slop, on the other hand, had an alright and average first half, and obviously his second half performance was even worse. But like I've said, when you've got, you know, the likes of Lacazette, Bellerin, Ozil pestering him down that left hand side, he's of course going to struggle. And although he did cope overall in the first half, in the second half he looked hugely uncomfortable, and obviously that just sums up his performance really. But when you consider the quality that these players possess, it's quite understandable that someone of Jeffrey Slop's quality, who's not necessarily the best but always puts in average performances, it's quite understandable that he's going to struggle in the game. But to be honest, if you want to pick out a good thing about his performance, is the engine he has, because most of the game, although he's struggling against these 3 players in particular, he was still working hard, running up and down the flank. And to be honest, like the back line, yes, he found himself getting pulled out of position so many times, but most of the time, you know, the defence played pretty well and stayed in position. But the few times that they did get pulled out of position, mainly Jeffrey Slop, obviously because he's got to deal with 3 players, when we did get pulled out of position, it was his pace that got him out of trouble. So I talked about this, you know, the end of last season, beginning of this season. Jeffrey Slop, you know, when he plays at left back, yes, he can venture forward, unlike someone like Ward or Kelly who hasn't got pace. But the only thing that allows him to go forward is, yes, he's got the pace, but also he's got the pace to get back. And say if he finds himself out of position or a player's running through on goal, Jeffrey Slop can use his pace to get him behind and make a challenge. And that's something we saw in this game, because it wasn't only his engine in terms of using his pace, running up and down the flank for the whole game. It was when the back line was pulled out of position, which was rarely, but when they did, obviously Jeffrey Slop using his pace was able to get him behind and obviously get the team out of trouble. But Jeffrey Slop here, I've given him a 5. A slightly disappointing performance from him, but quite understandable when he has to deal with Ozil, Bellerin and Lacazette. And to be honest, his first half performance was alright, his second half was slightly worse, but hopefully he'll get a rest against Man City, give Van Aanholt a chance again to see if he can bring himself back into the side. But based on this performance, maybe, you know, Van Aanholt's knocking on the door again, but I don't think we should drop Slop, because every player has an off game, and certainly here, you know, against Arsenal it was an off game for him. But I think a 5 is a fair result. Now to move on to the midfielder Luka Milivojevic, who I am going to give a 6. Battled hard in midfield and made more tackles than any other Palace player. So Luka Milivojevic here, I've given him a 6, and although it wasn't a fantastic performance from him in the fact that he didn't win the midfield battle, that's purely because of how well Arsenal were playing, so I can't really, you know, put him down in terms of that. And to be honest, in terms of all of our players on the field. I thought that he battled hard in the middle, so although he was finding it difficult because of the quality that Arsenal have in the midfield and attack, I still thought that he battled well. And actually, if you look back, even though this is not an official stat, if you look back at the game, for me personally, looking at the game, it looked like that he made more tackles than any other Palace player, which just shows that he's trying to stop Arsenal in the midfield before they can get to the attack, because really that's how it works. If you've got a team with as much quality that Arsenal have, you need to stop the midfield supplying the attack, and then that stops the amount of chances that Arsenal have going forward, because if you stop the supply to the attack, then you limit the chances that Arsenal have. And although we didn't do that fantastically in terms of the back line had to do well to stop the attacks, I still thought that Milivojevic did try to break up play and battle well in terms of making his tackles and stopping the play. But to be honest, because Arsenal have got so much quality and the fact that they're such a good passing team, they just passed, they had to pass the ball around him. And that's not because obviously Arsenal are just about a good passing team, but because Milivojevic was, proving a little bit harder to break down, so it was pretty hard to get around him. So Arsenal, who already are a passing team, they just had to pass a little bit more, obviously, to get past Milivojevic, which really, if you look at it, it just shows how good he's been, or how good he was in this game, and the fact that Arsenal, yes, they're a passing team, but they had to pass even more to get round Milivojevic, which just shows how much of a brick he was in the midfield in terms of trying to at least keep us solid at the back. But to be honest, it was another solid showing from him in the middle of the park, and to be honest, him and Wilshere, it was quite a good battle up against each other. Milivojevic versus Wilshere, I thought they'd done quite well in terms of contesting each other. They both had glimpses of fantastic play throughout the game. So actually, if you compare two players, yes, Wilshere was fantastic in this game, but I still thought that in terms of matching players from each team, I thought Milivojevic and Wilshere had a good battle on the field. But Milivojevic here, I personally think that he probably won't get rested against Man City. He'd be one of the players who sticks out because of how good I think his stamina is. And to be honest, against City, it's going to be really important that we play him and he plays on form, because his protection to the back four could be very crucial in terms of keeping Man City out. But Milivojevic here, not his best performance, not a vintage performance from him, but I think a 6 is a fair result when you consider how well he battled in the midfield. Now to move on to Yohan Cabaye, who I'm going to give a 6. Played with real attacking intent, and he tried his luck from range in the first half, but saw his effort fly narrowly wide. Withdrawn early in the second half. So Yohan Cabaye here, I've given him a 6, and much like Luka Milivojevic, I thought he had a good solid showing in terms of the midfield. But the thing that I liked about his performance is, yes, Milivojevic was playing defensive, so his job was to stop the attacks, but Yohan Cabaye on the other hand was instructed to go more forward and be more attacking, and actually he played with a fantastic real attacking intent in the first half. And that's most notable when he tried to have a shot from just outside the box in the first half, and it went just narrowly wide. So that just really summed up how he was actually looking to attack Arsenal. And because Arsenal were playing with a back three and we were playing with, you could argue, 2 players up front, but I personally think it would just Benteke up front with Zaha drifting off him. When you've got 1 player or 2 against a back three, it's going to be pretty hard to attack them. So what you've got to do is try and attack Arsenal from a different way, and that was Yohan Cabaye's job. So what he was doing, rather than us going quite direct and trying to get in the box, obviously our game plan was to try and punish Arsenal from distance, and that's something that Cabaye did, because if you can't get into the box, you've got to attack and try to score from other chances. So all we done, we got the ball to Cabaye, who was playing really well offensively, just give it to him to have shots from outside the box, and unluckily for us, one of them just went wide. And to be honest, his first half performance was pretty good, one of the best players on the field. To be honest, you could give him the 7 for the first half performance, but obviously whether it's because he got a little niggle from a tackle earlier on in the game, or whether it's just because something we keep saying every week, that his stamina is gone and he's losing it a bit, his legs, whatever it was, he got withdrawn quite early in the second half. And to be honest, because he was playing so well in the first half, he may have just run out of steam, and rightly so he got taken off. But really, the quality he had on the ball, I thought would have been crucial in terms of us trying to get back into the game, because obviously Andros Townsend scored, but as soon as Cabaye went off, we brought on McArthur. Not to say that McArthur was any worse, but as soon as McArthur came on, we conceded the other goals, and maybe that's just because we didn't have that quality on the ball and in possession that obviously Yohan Cabaye has. But to be honest, in terms of his overall game, I thought he started the game really well with really good attacking intent, and like I've said, he shot narrowly wide from range, which just shows that actually he was one of the players in the first half that came closest to punishing Arsenal. And if you look back at the timing of that chance, if that had gone in, which it looked like Petr Cech had it covered anyway, but if that had gone in, it would have been 1-0 to us, and maybe that would have changed the whole complex of the game. But to be honest, his good first half was fantastic. His good first half was good, but he seemingly struggled to continue that after the break. So although he started good in the first half, he really did struggle to, continue that after the break, and obviously that's why he got taken off. And it looked like maybe a late challenge from himself, or one he received as well, whatever it was, whether it was a tackle he made or received, something obviously made him pick up a niggly injury. It's been on the social media recently, or the last few hours, that he's probably going to miss the City game. He's going to be touch and go, and to be honest, I'd rather rest him and have him for the Southampton game than risking against City, because in this game he showed that he's got good attacking intent, but whether it's the tackle, whether it's just because his legs are going and he just run out of steam, whatever it was, he got taken off really early on in the second half, and obviously McArthur came on. But young by here, I've given him a 6. Not his best performance, but in terms of our attacking threat early on in the game in the first half, he was one of our real attacking players. He had great intent about him, he wanted to score, but unluckily for us, it sort of withered out in the second half and he obviously got taken off. But I think a 6 is a fair result for Cabaye. Now to move on to Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who I am going to give a 6. Found a lot of space on the left hand side and often had to cut inside on his right foot, but it seemed like he didn't get them shooting boots he asked for Christmas. Came off in the 70th minute. So Loftus-Cheek here, I've given him a 6, and when you consider how well he's been playing recently, despite playing out of position, this was a slightly off game, and like I've said with quite a lot of the players, it's quite understandable purely because of how good and the quality players that Arsenal had in this game. But in terms of his, talking about his performance overall, because he was playing out wide, because we were playing a sort of 4-4-2 formation, because of that he found himself on the left hand side, and quite a lot of the time, because there was no support or he wasn't allowed to drift inside and play a cam role, let's say, because of that he obviously had to drift inside or cut inside and obviously have a shot with his right foot. But something I've criticised him for recently is the fact that he gets into some good chances but he doesn't shoot, or there's other chances where he takes a shot where he should pass it. In this game it's like he done neither of them, and something I've been criticising for recently for not shooting. In this game he clearly didn't do that, because I said before Christmas he should start doing that, and obviously he didn't do that in this game, because there were loads of chances where actually he had good chances where he cut inside on his right foot, but obviously he didn't seem to have the I don't know the skills maybe to shoot, maybe you could say, because maybe he can't shoot from that far when cutting inside, or maybe it's just he doesn't have the confidence in himself to shoot from that far out or shoot when he's cutting inside on his right foot. Whatever it was, he had a few good chances on that left hand flank when he cut inside, but he just didn't seem to have the ability or the confidence to shoot from there. But to be honest, his performance was alright, hence why I've given him a 6, but he did come off in the 70th minute, purely because we were trying to change things up with 3-1 down at that point, and actually bringing on someone like Sakho, who changed the game in terms of a bit more pace and physicality. That was probably a good substitution, because I thought Sakho brought something to the game which was obviously missing, and I don't think it's because he was having a bad game, it's purely because he wasn't having any influence on the game playing out wide. But to be honest, I thought that when he started the game, obviously playing left of midfield, I thought that he successfully limited Hector Bellerin's advances. So quite early on in the game, Bellerin's trying to use his pace to create chances for Arsenal, but I thought that Loftus-Cheek playing with Slup down that side, I thought they'd done well to limit his chances. And to be honest, in possession, in the first half especially, when he had possession he looked quite dangerous, obviously especially when he got beyond the Arsenal wing back. So when he got past Bellerin, obviously he's able to get good crosses in or able to cut inside and have a shot, so he did look dangerous, but he didn't do anything with that. Like I've already mentioned, he didn't quite get the shooting boots he asked for Christmas, because he had the quality to actually cut inside, but he didn't quite have that end product to finish off the chance. But to be honest, in the game, when he was playing down the middle, I thought he made some very strong runs into the box, and actually I thought that he worked quite well with Zaha and Townsend. So that partnership with Zaha, Townsend and Loftus-Cheek, it seems to be growing every game, and they seem to be getting better and better as a partnership. And in this game, once again we saw how well that sort of front three partnership can work, and all we need to do now is to get Benteke in there, and our performances will improve tenfold, because we'll have all of the front three or the front four players will be communicating and having a good partnership together. But although he was good in the first half and he was making these strong runs and he was looking dangerous in possession, despite that, he faded quite a lot in the second half, and obviously that's why he's got taken off. But the man on loan from Chelsea, I've given him a 6 again. He rarely gets below a 6 because he puts in these good performances. But once again, Roy Hodgson, I know you're not listening, but you need to play him down the middle, because whenever he plays down the middle, he makes dangerous runs. He, does well in possession, but whenever he's playing out wide, he's wasted because he's not necessarily that great at crossing, and he's not got the pace to cut inside and get in behind. So really, play him down the middle so he can make these runs, and play Wilfried Zaha out wide, because when you swap them in this game, automatically it clicked and we scored. So what you need to do, I know you're not listening, but you need to start playing Loftus-Cheek down the middle and Zaha out wide. But do comment below what you think about Loftus-Cheek's performances, and whether you do think that actually we might have a chance to sign him come the end of the season. Now to move on to Andros Townsend, who I am going to give a 7. Refused to be beaten to Zaha's low cross, as he made his way back from the back post to curl the ball into the net from the penalty spot to score his first goal since the exact fixture in April. So Andros Townsend here, I've given him a 7, and in the last few weeks I've talked about how his performances haven't been great, in the fact that he hasn't had any end product and he hasn't had any goal scoring opportunities or hasn't put in enough crosses. But actually I did say that in them games, although he didn't have the end product, he actually had the effort and he was trying to put in the energy into the game, but nothing came off of it. Whereas in this game he done exactly the opposite, where he had all of the energy in the game, and this time he had some end product, and the goal he scored was absolutely fantastic. But to be honest, he didn't do anything fantastic in the game. In the first half, yes, he had little bits of joy on the right hand side of the midfield, but to be honest, he struggled to influence the game. Obviously, once again, despite having his best efforts, putting in loads of energy into the game, he still struggled to influence the game, and that was in the first half. But in the second half, came off from half time. Obviously Roy Hodgson said something which propelled the team on, really made them be up for the game in the second half, and actually it seemed to have an impact. They seemed to be more rejuvenated, let's say, in the second half. They wanted the game more, and actually we started the second half really well, and Townsend was one of these players that, although he had little bits of joy in the first half, it wasn't so great. In the second half it completely changed and he seemed to improve even more. So unlike players like Jeffrey Schlupp, who in the second half their performances got worse, Andros Townsend, actually his performance got better, and that's obviously resulted in him scoring a goal. But to be honest, the goal was fantastic. Obviously when Zaha moved out wide, we know every time that he gets moved out wide he improves, and when Loftus-Cheek gets moved down the middle we improve. So as soon as Wilf was moved out wide, he puts in a fantastic cross, beats Chambers, puts in a fantastic cross. Andros Townsend at the back post runs onto the penalty area. I believe it was his left foot, curled it into the bottom left hand corner of the goal, right in front of the homestyle. Fantastic goal to score. But it's not only the cross which was fantastic, it's actually the run that Townsend made from the back post, obviously to get to the penalty spot to score, and also the fact that he hit it first time with lovely accuracy and obviously enough curl on it to get it away from Petr Cech. So actually the goal was fantastic, not only because of the assist and how it was set up, but also the way that he took it, and the way that actually in the last few games he hasn't been having any end product, and then when he gets the one chance where it's really clear cut, he's able to take it really well. And to be honest, although his performances have been good the tail end of last season and have been improving recently, he hasn't scored a goal, and actually this is his first goal for Palace since the exactly same fixture last season in April, which just shows that yes, he's been playing reasonably well, but he hasn't had the end product. He hasn't scored any goals. So hopefully this goal will help him to propel on to get a few more goals this season, and hopefully, like we saw against Leicester, if he continues to put crosses in, hopefully he'll get more assists as well. But to be honest, it's great to see that he scored his first goal of the season. Obviously, beginning of the second half, like I've said, the team have come out really up for the game in the second half. Obviously, something was said at half time. They've come back into the game for the second half, rejuvenated, and actually, the goal from Townsend actually really just sums up our second half performance. The fact that we were actually trying to get something from the game, and it just shows right at the beginning of the first half we score, it's 1-1, 1-1. Right at the beginning of the second half we got a chance to get back into this game, but unluckily for us, 2 mistakes by Kelly and 2 fantastic goals by Sanchez obviously punished us. But at that point when we scored, it actually proved that that momentum we brought from the half-time talk helped us in the game. And to be honest, in terms of the goal, I've given him a 7 because of the goal and the fact that he had one of our best attacking threats other than Zaha, in the terms that he was, having good battles in the midfield and on the right hand side, and trying his best to get everything. But to be honest, the 7 mainly is obviously for the goal, but the fact that the run into the box was fantastic, and obviously the strike as well. So the goal is great, and if you have a player who scores a goal and along with a good performance, you give them a 7. But the main thing for me is the fact that the run into the box from the back post into the penalty spot was fantastic, and also the strike first time was great as well. But Andros Townsend here, I've given him a 7. He hasn't been necessarily consistent with his end product in recent weeks, but he's shown effort, and in this game it all came together. Good effort from him, good work ethic, and obviously he got the goal to end it off, and like I've said, a good goal it was. But Andros Townsend here, a 7 for him. Hopefully he can carry on performances like this in the next few weeks. Now to move on to Wilfried Zaha, who I am going to give a 7. Put a difficult first half behind him and set up Townsend to score with some brilliant wide play. Looked to threat with the ball at his feet and was a constant source of chances. So Wilfried Zaha here, I've given him a 7, and much like Townsend, who was playing on the other wing, I thought that Zaha was a constant attacking threat for Arsenal, and actually they did find him quite difficult to deal with. And although he was playing out of position for quite a lot of the game, especially in the first half where he was playing up front alongside Benteke, yes, he didn't get the best chances, and of course he was frustrated because he was getting kicked and pushed over for the first half, and you can understand that it was quite difficult for him. But he left that behind him, so he struggled in the first half, put that behind him, and actually in the second half, when he was moved out wide, he improved drastically, and none more so was that evident when he set up Townsend for the goal. Because really, we know how good he is, and we know how good he's been recently, but he's been neglected when he plays, you know, down the middle next to Benteke. But as soon as he moved out wide, much like it was in the Swansea game, in other games as well, against Watford as well especially, when he was moved out wide, he improved drastically, and none more so in this game here. But setting up Townsend's goal was fantastic. He moved out wide, fantastic run to get in behind the defence, past Callum Chambers, put the ball right on the penalty spot for Townsend. And like I've said already, Townsend, fantastic strike with his left foot into the bottom corner. So that was fantastic, the fact that he set up the goal. And actually, like I've said already, yes, he was having a frustrating first half, didn't let that affect his second half, and actually he put in a really good display. And like I've said already, that cross for Townsend was absolutely superb. You know, that could have gone to anyone in the box, but he obviously timed it and placed it just right so Townsend, you know, could get on the end of it. But like I've already mentioned, he did start in a central attacking position with Benteke, but quite often, because he was getting no service and he was being neglected out there, quite often he moved out wide, primarily on the left, but he did occasionally go on the right, and obviously that seemed to help us attack because we actually had Zaha, who's best down the wing. We actually had him being able to run in behind, and obviously that resulted in us getting the assist. And to be honest, he didn't have any luck in terms of playing in that forward role next to Benteke, but also he had no luck with the referee, because Michael Oliver, quite a lot of times there were loads of appeals for Zaha to get free kicks when he was pushed down, when he was kicked, especially by Callum Chambers, who found it really difficult to deal with him. But numerous appeals, and not one of them Zaha got. And you can understand with him having no protection from the referee, yet when Wilshere got fouled, which was even less of a foul than someone Zaha, when he gets fouled, the referee protects him and gives a free kick. So a little bit of inconsistency there from Michael Oliver. And Roy Hodgson said he's one of the best referees in the league. Yes, you could say that because he doesn't make many high-profile mistakes, but he's still got to be a little bit more consistent, because stuff like that, you've got to give. If you're going to give protection to Jack Wilshere, then you've got to give protection to Zaha. And quite a lot of the times, I don't want to be biased here, but quite a lot of the times, especially Callum Chambers, were bringing down Zaha. He went down, rightly a foul. You know, there's no doubt that there was no thing saying he's diving. It was a clear foul, and obviously Michael Oliver didn't do that. But to be honest, because of that, obviously because Zaha was a bit frustrated, he received a silly yellow card, and this is the first time I've seen a player get a yellow card at half time, because the whistle had already gone, the players are going down the tunnel, and he got booked in the tunnel. So it's the first time I've seen it, but you can understand with Zaha showing a bit of frustration towards the referee, because he's not giving him protection, he's getting kicked and pushed around by the Arsenal defenders, and ultimately that frustration, he channeled that into his performance in the second half, and actually, you know, he improved, because he showed what he's all about. Yes, they were all kicking and pushing him over, but he showed what he's about with that terrific assist for obviously Palace's first goal. And also, you know, that's something he was missing earlier on in the game, was actually getting the ball in the box. And in the second half, just to sort of show and channel in his frustrations, he was getting as many chances as he could into the box. And there was even one where a ball came in from Bakary Sakho. He ran into the box, had a header, but we know Zaha isn't good at headering. He's terrible at headering, so he headed it wide. So really, in the second half, he used them frustrations to channel into his performance, and actually maybe it was good that he got the yellow card because it made him concentrate more on his game, and actually he was fantastic in the second half. You know, not only with that terrific assist for Townsend, but the fact that there were so many times where he put the ball into the box and he cut inside with his right foot, and there was loads of other times as well where, like Saka, when Saka got the ball into the box, he was able to attack the ball as well. But to be honest, if you had to sum up his overall performance, or his second half performance in particular, he improved drastically in that second half, and that was when he was moved out wide. And that's the thing, I keep saying this every week, and Roy Hodgson keeps doing it, and I know he likes to be consistent and he likes to stick with his 4-4-2 formation, but really, based on this performance, based on the game against Watford, against Leicester, when Zaha plays out wide, that's you're obviously utilising his skills, but also it's when he plays at his best. So what he needs to do, Roy, is play Zaha out wide, because as evident in this game, when you move him out wide, he can run at defenders and get the ball in the box. But Wilfried Zaha here, a 7 for him, another good performance from him, although it may be slightly frustrating, the first half performance. But like I've said already, great assist for Townsend, and much like he is every week, week in, week out, he was the biggest threat against Arsenal. So Wilfried Zaha here, a 7 for him. Do comment below with your thoughts. Now to move on to the striker, Christian Benteke, who I'm going to give a 4. Won some aerial duels, but that was about it. Lots of flapping arms when crosses didn't find him, but in truth nothing went his way. A strong and powerful striker usually does his trick against Arsenal, but Benteke made it comfortable for the defenders. So Christian Benteke here, I've given him a 4, and obviously in the last few weeks he started to pick up form after missing that penalty against Bournemouth, and actually his performances have improved, and he obviously got the goal against Leicester. So coming into this game, we'd expect him to actually put in a decent performance if we give him the service, and considering he's now improving his form, we would have expected him to do that. And to be honest, although he did win some aerial duels and he did put himself about, that was really the only thing he'd done in the game. Won a few aerial duels, and to be honest, we knew he was going to do that anyway, because he's such a tall beast of a player that if you put the ball long to him, he's of course going to hit them. So of course we knew that he was going to win the aerial duels, but to be honest, that was about it. He didn't do anything else in the game, didn't have any other chances in the game, and to be honest, there was quite a lot of flapping arms when the crosses didn't find him. And to be honest, yes, we didn't put the ball to him enough, and we didn't supply him, which ultimately, this is what happened under Pardew, under Allardyce at times, where actually we weren't getting the ball to Benteke, which meant he was isolated, didn't have any chances. So ultimately, that's going to restrict his gameplay. But still, the chances we did give him, with the likes of Townsend and Zaha putting in balls into the box, yes, when he missed them, he was getting frustrated, lots of flapping arms. And to be honest, when we know how good he is, we know how strong and powerful he is, and usually, especially last season against Arsenal, he bossed the back line because he was using his physicality to get the better of the Arsenal back line. But to be honest, in this game, he made it quite comfortable for the defenders because he weren't going for all of the aerial duels. He wasn't using his strength to get past them. And quite a lot of the time, because he was isolated and because he wasn't actually getting involved, it was like we were playing with 10 men, because really it didn't look like he was actually on the field, purely because of how little influence he had. But to be honest, he's normally he would be the perfect weapon to obviously trouble Arsenal. You've seen the goals that Arsenal have scored this season. Their back line or their back three isn't exactly that strong. So if you get someone that's that strong and physical and powerful like Benteke, normally he should be able to be the weapon who can trouble the Arsenal defence. But to be honest, for Benteke, like I said, because of the isolation from us not supplying him, and purely because he wasn't really doing anything in the game, he was unable to get involved. And apart from a couple of knockdowns where he head the ball down and hold it up and pass it to someone, and a few flicked passes, to set up Zaha and Townsend, other than that, he didn't really do anything in the game. And to be honest, his second half wasn't any better. At least in the first half, he had a few flick-ons and, he won most of the aerial duels. Second half was even worse. And to be honest, if you look at the game as a whole, it was a really disappointing night for him, because he struggled to hold up the ball. Yes, he knocked it down a few times, but really, really struggled against this Arsenal defence, which isn't fantastic. He struggled to hold up the ball, and actually he also struggled to get himself into goal scoring opportunities, because there were so many times where actually, if he had, like Townsend did for the goal, if he had actually made a run into the box rather than just staying quite static and waiting for the ball to get on his head, if he had done that and actually got himself into goal scoring opportunities, maybe he would have had more chances to score in the game. But to be honest, I've given him a 4. Some may say it's harsh, and I've seen a lot of criticism for him. I personally think a 4 is right for him, just about. I don't even think a 5 is fair. I think a 4 is a fair result for him because it was a really disappointing game from him, you know. Other than winning a few aerial battles, which we know he's going to do because he's so big, other than that, his whole gameplay was really disappointing. And we need him to start firing goals. And whether it's because he hasn't got any competition or whether it's just because he's in a really bad bit of form, whatever it is, in January we need to bring in a new striker. Whether that's to replace him temporarily, to, you know, see if this other striker is any better, or whether it's just because to give him a bit of competition, like Connor Wickham last season, just to give him a bit of competition, and that will make him up his game. But to be honest, Christian Benteke here, another disappointing performance. I think a 4 is a fair result. Now to move on to the subs, Bakary Sakho, James McArthur and Timothy Fosu-Mensah. So Bakary Sakho and James McArthur, just to go over their performances briefly, I'm going to give them both 6s because they didn't really have any real impact on the game, but they still came on and done a shift for us. So in terms of Bakary Sakho's performance, he obviously joined Benteke up front with about 20 minutes to go, but to be honest, that wasn't really enough time for him to influence the game. And to be honest, obviously coming on for Benteke, coming on alongside Benteke meant that Wilf was moved out wide, and we saw how that improved Wilf's performance, so that was good. We wanted, you know, Wilf to play out wide. And then Bakary Sakho playing alongside Benteke, yes, he did do quite well to get himself involved, but to be honest, because he was next to Benteke, he didn't really have any end product. And to be honest, against City, if we have to rest a few players, maybe give Bakary Sakho a go, because the last few games coming off the bench, yes, he scored 2 goals in 2 games a few game weeks ago, but also he's now starting to actually get himself involved, a bit more energy into the side. And actually, if he, you know, this is good from a substitute, someone who comes off the bench and gives you that energy, you know, back into the team. And that's the thing I liked about his performance. Yes, he wasn't the main man in the team, but his substitute meant that Wilf moved out wide, he moved alongside Benteke and looked quite energetic. And like I've said, he didn't have any end product in terms of scoring, but that one cross in particular to Wilf, which obviously Wilf headed wide, that was quite good as well, because if Benteke had been in the box, that would have been a nice header for him, and he probably would have been able to score from that. But good performance from him. Obviously, James McArthur obviously came on for Yohan Cabaye on about the 50 to 55th minute. I can't remember exactly. It may even be the 53rd, but he came on quite early on in the second half, and he did fight hard. Obviously, Cabaye was playing quite well offensively in the first half, and I thought that actually James McArthur came on and he fought quite hard. And, you know, it was quite impressive actually winning back the ball in the midfield. So because he was working quite hard in the midfield, I thought that McArthur done really well, and it was quite impressive the fact that he won the ball quite a lot back in the middle. But to be honest, he's normally, you know, quite busy, and he done that as usual. And to be honest, although he was great in terms of, you know, winning the ball back and fighting hard and just being busy all over the field and being energetic, which you want from a substitute, to be honest, he didn't provide that bit of class that obviously Yohan Cabaye did, because Cabaye put a shot wide of the post early on in the first half, whereas McArthur, yes, McArthur came on and he's very busy, has the energy. He doesn't quite have that class that Cabaye does in terms of his winning possession, his passing, and obviously his shooting, because McArthur didn't really have any real shooting opportunities. But these two subs in particular, you know, Sakho and McArthur, they came on the field. Yes, they didn't have any real impact on the game, but they did give us a little bit more energy in terms of trying to get something from the game. And when you consider we went on to lose the game 3-2, you could actually say that in terms of winning that corner and in terms of scoring in the last few minutes of the game, and the fact that we kept pressing Arsenal to the end, you've got to give a bit of credit to these players. Now the final player was Timothy Fosu-Mensah. I'm not really going to give him a rating because in my opinion, because he was introduced quite late on for Martin Kelly, I don't think he had any real impact on the game. And to be honest, he didn't have any impact on the game, but then also he had little time to make an impact, so he was hardly on the pitch long enough to make an impact. And to be honest, Martin Kelly, I already mentioned it with the player ratings, but Martin Kelly was getting the run around from Alexis Sanchez. And to be honest, at half time, based on that first half, it probably would have been better to see Fosu-Mensah play, purely because that little bit more pace and physicality that Fosu-Mensah brings would be much better in terms of battling with Alexis Sanchez than Martin Kelly. Because I've already said Martin Kelly's much better as centre-back than he is at right-back. So bring on Fosu-Mensah, who's a much better full-back than Martin Kelly is. He's got the pace to go forward and obviously keep up with Alexis Sanchez. And maybe if he was brought on earlier, maybe the beginning of the first half, maybe we would have held on and maybe not conceded them 2 goals, purely because you know, Fosu-Mensah would have done a better job in terms of defending Alexis Sanchez. But these 3 subs here, you know, the first one, Sakho, McArthur, they came on, made an impact. Fosu-Mensah less so, but purely because he was playing less minutes. But do comment below what you think about the subs and whether you think any of these 3 players will start against Man City. So now just to give a small summary of the game, you know, this obviously, we coming into the game we were 8 games unbeaten, and obviously the 8 games unbeaten is now over. But to be honest, it shouldn't be underestimated, because to be honest, it's quite hard, you know, this is quite hard to beat an Arsenal side, and to be honest, we shouldn't have come into this game expecting to beat them. But to be honest, we can't underestimate how important this unbeaten run has been, purely in the fact that actually it's helped us to escape from the bottom 3, and our goal difference has improved a little bit more, and actually now we're starting to have a little bit more of a gap between the bottom 3 teams. And yes, it's still close, it's still only a few points, but the fact that we're now slowly escaping the bottom 3 is great to see. Now obviously the media and fans would like to believe that obviously Arsenal are really poor, they're really poor defensively, but actually, contrary to what the media would say, actually Arsenal are not a poor side, and actually the reason they played so well in the game is, yes, they're a good side anyway, but purely because we gave them too much space in the first half. You know, we made Arsenal look fantastic, and although they are a good team, recently they haven't been fantastic, but we made them look even better purely because we gave them far too much space. And to be honest, you know, there were moments in the game where we were looking quite good, you know, we were looking quite exciting on the counter-attack, but to be honest, yes, we only lost it 3-2, but the visitors just done a little bit more in terms of winning the 3 points. So like I said already, we gave them too much space, they scored the 3 goals. Yes, it was great for us to get it back to 1-1 and get that goal in the last few minutes to bring it back to 3-2, but ultimately the visitors, Arsenal, done just about enough to get the 3 points. But hopefully, obviously we're not going to get anything against Man City, but hopefully in the games that follow that in the new year we can carry on our form and build on these good performances. Now to move on to my Man of the Match award. But before I do that and give you my Man of the Match and why I thought had the biggest influence on the game, I'm now going to give you the 4 nominations I put forward for the award. So unlike our performance at the weekend against Swansea, where actually it was quite a lacklustre performance, not only from the Palace team but also from the Swansea team, in this game against Arsenal, yes, our first half performance wasn't that great, but in the second half when we got the equaliser, when we were pushing to get the equaliser when it was at 3-2, you know, I thought we actually did play well in periods of the game. So unlike the Swansea game where it was quite, you know, lacklustre for the whole game, I think in periods against Arsenal it was a lot better, and actually it was much easier than the Swansea game to actually pick out 4 players in particular, purely because of how much the performance was better. Now in terms of the players picked, there's a mix between defensive and offensive, because personally for me, offensively I thought in them periods in the game we were good going forward, and actually Arsenal could have won the game by an even bigger margin. So the fact that we played alright defensively in periods which kept the game at a low scoreline just, you know, really sums up our performance as a whole. But if we had played like we did at the beginning of the first half, like we did in the final sort of 5-10 minutes, if we played like that for the whole game, we may well have got a result, we may well have got a draw against them, but it's all hypothetical. We've lost the game 3-2, but actually from what we've seen from certain players, it was a good performance overall. Now the 4 players I've put on my shortlist are Wilfried Zaha, James Tomkins, Andros Townsend and Luka Milivojevic. So just to go through why I've put these 4 players on, and obviously, you know, do comment below what you think, but the reason I put these players on here, you know, like I've already mentioned, is for their defensive and offensive contributions. Now Wilfried Zaha here, you know, I keep saying this every week, but he's always in and amongst the Man of the Match shortlist, and that's because whatever team we play, if he's not having an off game, he's a constant threat to them. And especially here against Arsenal, they're playing a back 3. Callum Chambers in particular, who Zaha was, you know, targeting, I thought he was a constant threat to him. And even though in the first half he was a bit frustrated, got booked at half time, and he wasn't really having the best game there, in the second half, as soon as he was moved out wide, his whole game improved. He was constantly being a threat, and actually he set up the assist for Townsend. Great ball into the box. The fact that he got past Chambers, put that ball in onto the penalty spot for Townsend to score, was absolutely fantastic. So not only was he a constant threat, but as soon as he moved out wide, he used his pace to get in behind the defence, put a really good ball in, and obviously Townsend was able to finish. Now in terms of James Tomkins, you know, this guy's been in the shortlist much like Zaha quite consistently recently, but James Tomkins solid at the back as usual. You know, Tomkins has been one of our most consistent players in the last sort of few games, and that's because he hasn't got injured now yet. He looks like he hasn't got any niggly injuries, and actually this is probably his longest run in the team without getting injured. But he's been solid in the last few games, solid again here. And to be honest, yes, he was solid. He kept Arsenal out. You know, he made so many tackles I lost count in terms of stopping Arsenal. But the main thing is, you know, we're chasing the game. We're 3-1 down. He rose the highest at the corner. Obviously, scored the goal from a set piece. Obviously, very late in the game, so we might have been able to get an equaliser, but we ended up not getting it. But the fact that he was able to raise higher than any of the other players, brilliant header into the corner from a set piece, was fantastic. And not only is it his first goal of the season, which is great to see, but also it's Palace's first set piece goal of the season. So I've been talking about the last few weeks the fact that we're putting in good deliveries, but no one's meeting them. And then the other case is that we've got people in the box. We've got the height of Dan, Tomkins, Benteke, but no one's able to get in the end of the crosses because the deliveries haven't been good. But in this game in particular, because we scored our first goal from a set piece, the delivery from Townsend was good, but also the header from Tomkins to rise above all of the players and head that home was fantastic as well. So not only for the goal he scored, but also the fact that he was fairly solid. Obviously, Andros Townsend here, like I've said already, with Zaha, he was a constant threat to Arsenal, using his pace and his crossing ability to punish Arsenal. And because they were playing a back three, if you get wingers to run in behind, you can really hurt a back three. And I thought that in terms of Townsend's performance, much like Zaha's, he was using that to good effect. Now, quite a lot in the game, you know, I've already mentioned this with Benteke, but Benteke playing in the middle of the park, we were putting in so many crosses to him, and most occasions he wasn't able to get in the right position to get in the end of them. But the fact that Townsend has got that attacking impetus to actually put in crosses is great to see as well. And to be honest, that's something that now we've got Benteke back fit and he's not suspended, we need to make sure that we can get balls to him, obviously to make sure that he can get his head on them. But obviously Benteke needs to improve, but then also we've got to carry on putting crosses into the box, because eventually the more crosses you put in, eventually Benteke is going to get on the end of them. But in terms of his goal, and the main reason he's on the shortlist is purely because of the fact how great the goal was. So I talked about Zaha running in behind Chambers, putting that cross into the penalty area, and Andros Townsend against his rivals, when you consider he's an ex-Tottenham player, so it's against his rival club in terms of where he started his football career. So he's hit that brilliantly, you know, the ball's come to him in the penalty area, lovely curling effort right into the bottom corner, great first time finish, great goal overall. You could debate maybe be one of our goals of the season, purely because of not only the goal itself, but also the build-up involved in it. Now, the final player on our shortlist is Milivojevic, and to be honest, I thought, like always, he battles hard in the midfield, and to be honest, in terms of his contribution, he's one of the players that always puts in tackles, and although I wasn't actually counting how many tackles he made in the game, it did look like that he was making more tackles than any other player on the field, which really just highlights how important his defensive contribution is. The fact that he, you know, gets around the field, puts in these challenges to obviously stop the opposition. But to be honest, Milivojevic didn't have the best game, hence why I gave him a 6 in the player ratings. But I still thought you had to pick a fourth player. I was debating maybe to put Speroni in there because he made all of them saves. But some people are criticising him for the goal and the fact that he parried it there. He parried it in the right position, but because some people may not, you know, agree with me that he should be on there, we've left Speroni out for making these important saves. So I brought Milivojevic in because I still thought that in the midfield, even though how good Arsenal's midfield was, especially with Wilshere, I thought that Milivojevic battled well, not necessarily winning the midfield battle, but still worked hard in that middle of the park and obviously put in loads of tackles. And like I said, more tackles than most of the team put together. But for me, although we've got a player who assisted and a player who scored on my shortlist, I've got 2 who've scored and 1 who got the assist, I'm actually going to give it to the defender James Tomkins. So congratulations, James. You don't get a trophy or certificate, but you do get my sincere congratulations on what was another solid performance from you defensively. But what topped it off, obviously you were making tackles and blocks and being solid defensively, but the thing that topped it off was that great goal you scored from a set piece. So that's what really for me that made him stand out, because yes, Townsend's goals great, but because Tomkins had an influence not only offensively in scoring but also defensively in keeping Arsenal out and keeping it at 3 goals that we conceded, that all really just sums up and epitomises how good his performance was. But all of these players here, they done good, you know, Tomkins, Milivojevic good defensively, Zaha, Townsend and Tomkins for the goal very good offensively, but do comment below with what you think and whether you do agree with the 4 players I put forward for the award. So now you've had my match report, player rankings and my man and match, that concludes this week's podcast. Now I've got an exclusive interview with Roy Hodgson and Andros Townsend following the game.
Just unfortunately that unbeaten run has come to an end, but the players fought till the end today, didn't they?
Yeah, we did, and I think everyone was disappointed going in at half-time about our performance. It wasn't good enough. We set off and we gave them too much space, too much time on the ball, and a quality side like Arsenal will punish you, and they did in the first half. But second half, at half-time, the manager had a word with us, told us not to be afraid of them and take the game to them. I think we did that in the second half. We gave a good account of ourselves, but unfortunately we came up a little bit short.
It was a really good spell once it got to 1-1, but is there always that danger with Arsenal they can hit you on the break?
Yeah, of course, they're a world-claess team. I think after we got that first goal, there was only one side looking to win it. The crowd were on our side. Selhurst Park was rocking, but I think they scored at a crucial time for them, and they took the game away from us. And when a side like Arsenal get ahead for the second time in a match, it's difficult to pull it back, and we just came up a little bit short today.
Yeah, your first goal of the season, great finish, but you ran straight to Wilf in the celebration there.
Yeah, of course, he did all the hard work, and I just had to guide it into the goal. Yeah, but no, it's a huge relief for myself. I think it's been evident I've been frustrated that I've not been able to chip in this season and take the burden off Wilf a little bit. But no, hopefully that chip on my shoulder's gone now, and hopefully I can relax a bit more and chip in a bit more with goals and assists. But at the end of the day, we've not picked up any points. So.
The second goal and assist, I think it's the first set-piece goal of the season. Is that something that people have found frustrating at all?
Yeah, I'm surprised at that actually, because we're actually really good. We're actually really dangerous at set pieces. It always seems that keepers pull off worldies from us at set plays. We've had countless set pieces, corners, free kicks cleared off the line. Yeah, but no, that's something we know we're good at. We've always been good at over the years. Scotty, Dan and Tonks have attacked the ball really well. Yoan's got incredible deliveries, so I think it's a disappointing stat to hear that that's the only goal we've scored this season. I'm sure we need to score a few more.
And we've got Man City coming up next, not long now, and then Southampton straight after that. As a player, how do you manage your fitness?
Obviously, it's a difficult time of the year, but that's why we play football. We want to be playing the best sides at Selhurst Park. We know the crowd are going to be behind us like they were tonight. The place was rocking, and I'm sure it'll be the same on New Year's Eve against City. It's going to be a monumental effort if we're going to get anything from the game, but we're a confident bunch, and we're confident that if we perform to the levels we know we're capable of, we can pull off a shock.
Obviously a disappointing result in the end, because at 1-1 it looked like you were going to get something out of that game.
Yeah, I mean the first half I thought that Arsenal certainly deserved to go in 1-0 up. They asked a lot of questions of us, and our attacking play wasn't as sharp as we'd have liked it to have been, and we didn't pressurise them as well as they were pressurising us, which of course is a recipe for disaster when you're playing against teams of Arsenal's quality. I thought second half we remedied that and started the second half very well, and when we equalised, I honestly believe we were on the front foot then, and we're looking good value, and possibly looking as if we might kick on from there. But we conceded 2 goals, especially the second one, which was a body blow for us. And after that, I thought the players showed great resilience, great determination to in no way capitulate and to continue to fight and try and take the game to Arsenal, risking the counter-attack, which was always going to be a possibility when you throw players forward like we were doing. And in doing so, I thought we created chances, and I thought the second goal was probably a reward for that effort. But it came late, the goal, and unfortunately we didn't have the chance to get the third, which maybe had the goal come earlier, we might have been able to do.
Roy, can I just ask you about Wilf? Obviously he was riled up at half-time. Did you expect that sort of response for him when he really took charge of the game?
I think he felt hard done by in the first half. You know, he was bundled over once or twice. Difficult for a manager to really make sensible judgments on whether the referee got it right or whether he had a case. We're talking about one of the best referees in the country, someone that I certainly very much respect. I wasn't creating as much fuss for those situations as Wilf was, of course. But then I wasn't the one being bundled over. But he did very well, I think, to calm himself down during the half-time interval, and to make certain that in the second half, any frustration, any problems that he might have felt, or any injustices he might have felt, he channeled that into his performance. And I thought that, you know, he really did cause them a lot of problems, and a lot of the chances and half chances we were creating during that second half were with him, if you like, at the centre of it.
We all know that Wilf is, you know, passionate about the game, but he was very lucky. Might have been lucky to come out second half, because when he was booked, he then applauded the referee. Another referee might have sent him off on another day.
I didn't see that, I'm afraid. You know, these are the type of things that when you're a manager, you're watching so many things, and you don't focus necessarily your attention. When he was booked, I was already looking to see what the rest of our team were doing in terms of defending the free kick. But, you know, once again, with Michael Oliver's a top-class referee. He doesn't want to send people off for those things, and I'm always quite amazed these days when I see games analysed that everything seems to feature or to centre around why wasn't this done, why did this player not get sent off, why was that foul not punished, etc., etc. When you're involved in the game like we are as managers and coaches, players and referees, lots of things go on really, and I think sometimes you need to take a more global view of the situation, and I'm pretty sure Michael Oliver in that situation realised that, okay, he's very frustrated, and he preferred to keep the game flowing and not necessarily to administer, as you would possibly have liked, a letter of the law, because unfortunately if we keep administering every letter of the law, we're going to end up playing five-a-side football fairly soon. There's no question of that, especially now when cameras pick up things which no one else has seen with their 7 or 8 different angles. So, you know, I think the five-a-side football is not far around the corner, and then all of you can be quite happy that you've spotted it and the referee has followed the letter of the law as laid down by the various interpretations that we have today.
So there you have it. Now you've heard what Roy Hodgson and Andros Townsend had to say after the game. That concludes this week's podcast for the game against Arsenal. But make sure to come back next week for more post-match review of the game against Man City. So thanks for listening, and remember to up the Palace.